Number 10. Lauren Pazienza. An 87-year-old singing coach named Barbara Mayer Gustern was waiting for a taxi to go see one of her students perform in Manhattan earlier this year, when someone charged at her from behind and shoved her for no apparent reason. She fell to the ground and smacked her head against the pavement, leaving her with a large gash. While waiting for emergency responders, Gustern told a friend that she had never been hit so hard before in her life. Police arrived just in time to get a description of the attacker before Gustern fell unconscious. She was rushed to the hospital and treated for brain trauma, but died from her injuries. 2 weeks later, a 26-year-old woman named Lauren Pazienza turned herself in and was charged with manslaughter. The suspect's motives for randomly attacking an elderly stranger out of nowhere remain unclear. Judge Felicia Menon revoked the young woman's bail after prosecutors argued she was a flight risk and a threat to the public. Pazienza's lawyer, John Esposito, said she wasn't a flight risk and she didn't know the victim was an elderly woman. Prosecutors insist that in the days after the incident, Pazienza fled to her parents' house in Port Jefferson on Long Island, staying away from her apartment in Astoria, Queens. They say she rapidly deleted all of her social media accounts. Pazienza's lawyer, Arthur A. Dalla, told the Daily Mail that his client is a good person who's being accused of something awful and that she's devastated by the ordeal. But people from her past painted a much different picture, describing her as violence-prone, emotionally unstable, and dangerous. Prosecutors claim Pazienza was upset on the night of the tragedy because the park she was at with her fiancé was closing and she didn't want to leave. She remains behind bars without bail while the case plays out in court. Number 9. JORDY HONNER. 20-year-old JORDY HONNER was just 105 miles into her road trip along the West Australia coast earlier this year when she noticed a man in a white SUV following her. She knew it wasn't just her imagination when she stopped at a convenience store and the other vehicle also pulled into the lot. The driver remained in the car while JORDY went inside, and when she left, he trailed right behind her. After driving for a few more miles, the young woman pulled into a parking bay. The man approached her and repeatedly asked for her phone number. When she refused to give it to him, he lunged at her and choked her. JORDY tried to grab a knife to fight back with, but she quickly fell unconscious and woke up hours later to a truck driver pouring water on her face. She had been brutally beaten and left for dead beneath her vehicle. JORDY drove herself to the hospital, where she received treatment for injuries to her eye, jaw, ribs, and pelvis. She told 9 News that she wonders if her attacker thought he killed her. The suspect is still at large. Number 8. QUINN Mayweather. In 2020, 4 women were randomly attacked in Nutley, New Jersey, over the span of just a few hours. The suspect, 22-year-old QUINN Mayweather, allegedly approached the first victim and asked if he could talk to her. When she said no, her attacker punched her in the face. A 60-year-old woman claimed that the same man had demanded that she let him use her phone. She said no, and the person swung at her several times, leaving her with minor injuries. Mayweather was also accused of putting a 45-year-old woman in a chokehold and punching a 35-year-old woman outside a nail salon. Although none of the victims were severely injured, police took the unprovoked attacks seriously. Nutley Police Director Alphonse Petraccio alleged the suspect was upset over unrelated reasons and took it out on 4 innocent strangers. It wasn't long before officers caught up with Mayweather and took him to jail on suspicion of aggravated assault. Number 7. Evans innocent. A woman was just arriving at a workplace in London one day in 2020 when a man rushed her from behind and hit her in the head. He then stabbed her repeatedly in the head, neck, and shoulder before fleeing the scene with a weapon in hand. Police revisited the crime scene the next day and found their suspect, 45-year-old Evans, innocent on the street with 4 weapons in his possession. The woman's DNA was found on a large bladed knife. A subsequent investigation linked innocent to 2 other random stabbings that happened in the same month. The victims were left seriously injured, and sometimes they were lucky to be alive. Detective Constable Russell Harvey accused the suspect of going out into the street specifically to commit premeditated acts of violence and doing everything in his power to impede the investigation after his arrest. Innocent was found guilty of attempted murder and several weapons charges, and received a 25-year sentence that was ultimately reduced to 21 years because of his mental health issues. Number 6. Brooks Nader. Sports Illustrated model Brooks Nader made headlines earlier this year for something other than her stunning good looks, when she posted a series of Instagram stories about how a stranger had tried to hack her with a small GPS device. The 25-year-old was on her way home after bar hopping in Manhattan when she received an alert on her phone that her location was being tracked. Someone had slipped an Apple AirTag into Nader's coat when it was slung over the back of a chair at a bar or restaurant she had visited earlier that evening. Launched last year, AirTags are meant to help people keep track of things they might lose easily, like their headphones or keys. Of course, the devices have been used for much more sinister purposes, as Nader's story proves. After the news broke, Apple issued a statement saying that it takes customer safety seriously. To prevent people from using AirTags to stalk people, the company has developed a notification system that alerts people when an unknown device has been moving with them for a certain amount of time. This is how Nader learned about the AirTag that she didn't realize she was carrying. There's also an alert system that causes an AirTag to make a noise when it hasn't been with its registered owner for an extended period and movement is detected. Even with these safety features, experts say that more needs to be done in the tech industry, particularly among Apple's rival companies, to protect people from nefarious tracking. Nader's stalker was never identified, and police have no further leads. Number 5. DENA Everman. DENA Everman was about to complete the sale of her home in Marietta, Georgia in 2017 when she stopped by the house to take one last stroll down memory lane. She found the dwelling occupied by a couple and their 2 children. They weren't prospective home buyers. Everman did not know who they were, and she certainly hadn't given them permission to be there. Tamara Pritchett and her family had moved into the house 2 weeks earlier after responding to a Craigslist ad saying it was for rent. She said she wired money to the person, who claimed to be an associate of Everman's, and received a set of keys in exchange. Pritchett also claimed that they weren't squatters and that they had signed rental documents. Everman said that the locks on the home had been changed and that there was a shattered window, showing that someone may have broken in and changed the locks. She also pointed out that any documentation Pritchett had was unauthorized and therefore fraudulent. Pritchett said that all she wanted was some time to move, but Everman was determined to get the family out as soon as possible so she could finish selling the house. Given that this was not a clear-cut case of breaking and entering, police initially refused to kick the occupants out and told Everman she had to file a formal eviction case in court. Instead, she contacted the district attorney, who deemed the Pritchett activity to be criminal trespassing. They left the property within 8 hours of being notified. Number 4. Satish Kumar. One British woman's personal stalking hell began in 2014, when a man she'd never met named Satish Kumar started bombarding her with messages on social media. She eventually blocked him, and he began contacting her friends and colleagues. On at least one occasion, he said that he was waiting outside the woman's workplace. Late last year, Kumar went to the area his victim's family lives in and asked someone on the street about her. He also went into a local pub repeatedly, where he also asked people about the woman. Kumar's strange behavior prompted someone to call the police, who charged him with stalking. During questioning, he reportedly told investigators he believed he and his victim were a couple and that they were meant to marry and have children together. Yet, they had never even had a face-to-face conversation. Detective Inspector Danielle Knox told the BBC that it was clear that Kumar would not stop stalking the woman without police intervention. He pleaded guilty to stalking with fear of violence and received a 3-year prison sentence. He's also banned indefinitely from having any contact with his victim. Number 3. Andrew Swofford. A few years ago, a University of North Carolina student named Maddie wondered if her apartment was haunted. She frequently came home to things out of place or missing. One day, she heard a strange noise coming from her closet and called out, "Who's there?" A male voice responded, identifying himself as Drew. He was in Maddie's closet, wearing her clothes and shoes, and he had a backpack filled with her clothes. The man begged Maddie not to call 911. Fearing what he might do if she did, she sent her boyfriend photos of what was going on. He contacted the police and headed over to the woman's apartment. Maddie later told the local station WGHP that while she waited for help to arrive, the home intruder told her she was pretty and asked if he could give her a hug. He fled the scene when Maddie's boyfriend arrived. Police soon caught up to the man, who was identified as 30-year-old Andrew Swofford, and charged him with a misdemeanor breaking and entering. Maddie and her roommate were left shaken by the ordeal. They said that they always kept their doors locked and that they did not know how Swofford got into the apartment. Even more shockingly, this wasn't the first time the woman found uninvited men in their home. Just months earlier, they had arrived to find 2 men in the living room. The landlord changed the locks, and no police reports were made. Both Maddie and her roommate moved out immediately after finding Swofford in the closet. Number 2. Craig Donnelly. Olympic runner Emily Infield was nursing an injured foot in 2018 when she began receiving messages from a man named Craig Donnelly, who claimed to be a USA track and field coach. Unable to verify his credentials and becoming increasingly alarmed by his overbearing nature, she blocked him. Not long after that, Infield began receiving strange voicemails and emails about wedding plans. Then, packages started showing up at her house. Infield was granted a permanent protective order against Donnelly and breathed a sigh of relief when several months passed, and then a year, without hearing from him. But the harassment started back up, and this time, Donnelly took a more sinister and hateful tone. He slandered Infield online, messaged her constantly, and threatened to kill her, leaving her in constant fear for her life. In mid-2020, Infield's security team told her that Donnelly had moved across the country and rented a room just miles from her home in Oregon. They advised her to move for her safety, so she and her husband uprooted their lives and moved many states away. By the time an arrest warrant was issued for Donnelly in Oregon for violating Infield's protective order, he fled the state. Federal authorities caught up with him in Tennessee and charged him with cyberstalking and violating an order of protection. It was revealed that Donnelly suffered from a traumatic brain injury after he had a seizure and hit his head in 2016. He underwent extensive rehabilitation, and his personality changed dramatically, showing a newfound lack of empathy and proneness to rage. Donnelly also allegedly started making outlandish claims about dating famous singers and became paranoid about things like the government and the Illuminati. Late last year, a judge deemed him mentally unfit to stand trial and ordered him to be sent to a mental facility until his mental health is restored well enough for court proceedings to move forward. Number 1. An apologetic intruder. A New Mexico couple returned to their Santa Fe home earlier this year after a few days away and were greeted by the overwhelming stench of beer and a sink full of dirty dishes. They certainly hadn't left it this way, so they knew someone had been in the home. The husband opened a bedroom door to find a tall young man standing there with a duffel bag and an assault weapon on the floor next to him. He apologized profusely for being there and even seemed embarrassed. When the homeowner asked why the burglar was there, he reportedly said that his family had been killed in Texas and that he was fleeing from someone, according to a police report. He did not appear to be mentally ill and also said that his car had broken down about 100 miles away. On his way out the door, the intruder threw 2 $100 bills onto a chair and told the couple that it was reimbursement for breaking a window in order to get into their home. Nothing had been stolen other than some food the man ate during a stay, and the house wasn't damaged or in disarray. He left behind little evidence, leaving the police perplexed about his identity and reasons for being in the area. There were no reports of anyone seeing a person of the man's description, although he suspected of breaking into an RV nearby. He remains at large. Thanks for watching. Would you rather come home from work to find a stranger in your house acting like they live there, or accidentally throw away a $100 winning lottery ticket and not realize it until it's too late? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more great videos coming soon. See you next time. Bye!